Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Brian Winia, and I'm going to take you through three different lighting setups that I've used on my photos and videos that could kind of help you get started if you're on your journey to lighting. Right here, we have our model, and she is actually posing on a bike, and well, more like leaning on a bike. And in this scene, what I wanted to do was basically just kind of get that summer vibe, and that's still very um, open to interpretation with the artist. But let's go ahead and see how the lighting is kind of done here. So right here, I always kind of favor putting my subjects back toward the sun, or at least at an angle behind them. As you can see, if I draw a line down the middle of our model, you could see that part of her is in shadow and the other half is in light. And how did I achieve this lighting situation here was I'm using the sun here to kind of give this edge light. I don't know if you guys can see that, but just to kind of separate her from this background. Okay, so we have background here. And also you could actually see light. This is all just the sunlight again hitting the wall. In order to get the lighting on her face, and if you could see, there's like little catch lights in her eyes. You get this nice lighting on her face. There was a beadboard that I had my grip holding here. So basically a beadboard's like a reflective material, white side, and that's just bouncing. All this light is bouncing back into our model. Now this is good. I think you guys could kind of use this lighting situation if you were doing interviews. This is great if you don't have access to lighting. Sometimes we got to work with what we have, and we're running and gunning, and this is going to be pretty much a simple setup. There's a lot of things you could do with natural lighting, and I strongly urge you to try to understand where your sun is at. Now, the sun is coming from an angle in the sky, so you could kind of see where that angle is. It's not directly on top of her. The light's not coming down directly on top of her. It's actually coming from the side. So when using the sun, you definitely want to try to keep the angle of the sun not at 12 o'clock for sure. So again, simple beadboard, the sun as our main source, and this is all about positioning your model too. I love to have shadows in my image. Sometimes that helps bring out a little bit of drama. And here's a rule. I think that the more shadow you have, the more dramatic the image will look. But in this case, because we're trying to do a summer vibe situation here, I'm lighting most of her face. The more drama I want, maybe the more I'm going to fill this in with shadow. Okay, so let's see what that looks like on a... So this is the same diagram setup. Just imagine this is the photo. Here's our model. This is the sun in relation to our model, and this is the bounce board. Our camera is facing, and notice if this is our model's face, that she's at an angle. Okay, so this is kind of a stylistic choice. You could decide to do that if you wanted to, but this is basically the lighting setup. We have the sun bouncing into the bounce board, also creating an edge light, and that bounce board bouncing back light into our model's face. Very simple. Okay, now moving on to our second lighting setup. In this image, we have our model, and this is kind of going more toward a fashion kind of cinematic image that I'm trying to achieve with this video. And so we actually have our model center framed as an intro to the shot. So where's our sun in relation to our subject? Our sun is pretty much in this section. So we are actually kind of almost toward the golden hour stage. When you're using the sun, I always recommend trying to keep the sun at a lower angle in the sky to kind of get flattering lighting. If that's what you're going for, again, you could get harsh lighting with, sun in mid noon. And it just really depends on what you're trying to achieve. For this purpose, I'm going for a kind of, carefree feeling, which I believe the sun setting kind of gives. And I'm also going kind of for a fashion type shoot, you know. So this is also dependent on, wardrobe, so we are trying to bring back denim here. And I wanted to show you this image because I did not use any reflectors, beadboards, or anything like that. I am only using the power of the sun, and that helps light up our subject, gives her a nice little edge light here. Now, why are edge lights important? Well, imagine all this brightness behind our subject. So we have all this brightness here. And how do we help our subject pop from that background? We help her pop by adding a little bit of edge light to separate her. So that's my reasoning behind this photo. It's a very simple setup. I actually don't mind that she is in shadow here. And, it just really depends on the feeling you're going for. In our first photo with our first model, her face is definitely lit. I'm bouncing light back into her face using a beadboard. In this situation, though, it's a very dramatic opening. So I have more shadow across the model here. And that kind of adds maybe a sense of mystery, maybe a little suspense. Use shadow and lighting to tell your story. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in a diagram. So this is our lighting setup 2. And again, camera is just a single camera. Our model is actually staring into the camera. And here we have the sun just adding a nice little edge light. Your setups don't have to be complicated. I think that the more simple the setups are, the more room you have to be creative. Remember that it's also composition that you want to be looking at. Use the sun to your advantage. This is, I like to say this sun was about 5:30 p.m. sunlight. So the other thing you want to do is scout your locations. Think about your locations. What's that going to look like when there's sun, depending on where the sun is in the sky. In our last sample lighting, this is for a music video that I did just maybe a couple months back. And I want to show you guys how to use lighting in a stylistic way. So in this frame, we wanted to kind of get in really close to our lead singer because we felt like the music or the song that they were performing kind of happened within the mind of our singer. So we're bringing our audience closer. And again, I think here it's almost a center frame, but you notice as well that he is actually contrasted by a cyan light and a red light. Now, what do these colors mean in terms of lighting the situation? It's a very dark and gritty mindset. Maybe this the colors that he sees, just kind of going into that psyche of his. Um, but I like to say this was more of a stylistic choice in this situation. Um, but here we actually have the background just completely blacked out in darkness, and that kind of represents the mind. The lighting situation here, wasn't too complicated. If you have gels, or I like to say cellophane, if you're using LEDs, colored gels, anything like that, that you could put over your light to kind of give it a color. The lighting setup was very simple. What we did was we had one light position right next to the actor that was red, and then we had another one that was positioned to his left that was kind of like a cyan color. So this is, pretty much a very simple lighting setup. Again, don't make it complicated. Let's go see what that looks like in a diagram. Okay, so this is our lighting diagram here, and you could see that we actually have the two lights set up exactly to the sides of our actors. So here we have basically the cyan light kind of illuminating our subject, and then we have our red light illuminating our subject from his right. Okay, very simple. There's no lights in the background. That's just to kind of keep us in the dark. So we're surrounded in darkness. These are the only two lights you need. Do you need fancy lights? No, you could actually go to Home Depot and get those colored light bulbs. They run anywhere from $5 to 25. It just depends on what brand you're looking at. But you could achieve this with any lighting. The trick is just to make sure that your subject is properly exposed. So again, this is just a couple of our lighting setups that we use to achieve a very simple yet stylistic look. And when you just take the time to look at your lighting and you try to understand, what it is you're going for, what the story is, then I think it's going to better inform your lighting decisions. So here's my parting wisdom to anybody that's trying to get into lighting: is you want to kind of just go and start taking photos of people in lighting. Try to get people near a lamp. Try to illuminate their face. Another exercise you could do is you could take a light bulb and kind of rotate it around your subject's head to see how the shadows fall. And that kind of give you a good idea when you're out in the field. Like, oh, I want to light my subject more frontal, or maybe from the back. You probably noticed that in the three samples that I have, my lighting, my main light source is coming from the back, but I'm either bouncing light or I'm deciding to leave my subjects in shadow. Again, that's very subjective. That's something that I wanted to do at the time that I felt was right and appropriate for the film, but it isn't the standard way. And I'd like to say, before you go in and you practice, a three light setup, maybe try learning how to practice shooting with one single light source. And the most available light source you have is your sun. So go out there, shoot, light things, and just have fun. Be more mindful of how the light falls around you. And I think you're going to do great.